Hello everyone. Good afternoon to all of you. I'm Shruti Bhatt, a student coordinator of the upcoming hackathon DotSlash 4.0. And on behalf of the entire team, I welcome you all. So today we begin with the first workshop in the series of workshops presented to you by DotSlash 4.0. As you all must already be aware that today's talk will be on the topic innovation and entrepreneurship. They say that innovation is the unrelenting drive to break the status quo and develop anew where few have dared to go. So, without further ado, let me introduce you to our today's speaker, which is Mr. Anand Chowdhary. Mr. Anand Chowdhary is the co-founder and CTO of Coach, a Switzerland-based interior subscription service. He was also the co-founder and former CEO of Oswell Labs, the award-winning accessibility technology company behind the first end-to-end web accessibility platform and the first dyslexia-friendly AR reading app. Apart from this, he has been featured in Forbes 30 Under 30 Asia 2018, Dutch Financial Times, a list of 50 most innovative entrepreneurs and professionals under 35 in the Netherlands, and in publications such as the Next Web, HuffPost, Hindustan Times, and the Time Out magazine. He has also spoken at 20 plus events in 10 plus cities around the world and is an open source advocate and contributor. He is also a consultant, advisor, and mentor to several startups around the world. Mr. Anand Chowdhary is a creative technologist and entrepreneur trying to make technology inclusive and accessible to everyone. And it makes me so proud to share that Mr. Anand is also one of our judges for DotSlash 4.0. We feel honored to have you here today, sir. And now I would request you to take over.
Okay, thank you so much for that introduction. That was very thorough. And I think I can skip this slide now because I think you already know everything you have to know. Yeah, so hi, I'm Anand, and I'm currently working full time as the founder and CTO of Koi. It is a Swiss living as a service company. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a second. But I'm mostly known as the founder of Oswald Labs, which is a technology company where we focus on building technology for people with disabilities. Yeah, so rather than just go on about this, let me just get started because I like to kind of I don't know if it makes any sense, but I've kind of formulated this in terms of how do you find opportunities and then kind of work towards them and let's say build a business. Because the topic is innovation and entrepreneurship, I think the best thing to do is kind of go through a little bit about my journey and how I got here, and what I kind of learned along the way to help you use the same learnings. So the first thing is how our experience, our background, our upbringing, who we are as a person, just like the personal part of our, what's fundamentally us, and our toolkit, which is the tools we use. Let's say you're a designer or you're an engineer or you're a business major. So that's like what you've learned to do. How they kind of come together, and they help you find and work on new opportunities. So that's how I kind of like to think of it. So a little bit about me. Over the past couple of years, I've had the privilege of working with some really smart companies around the world, um, helping them shape their digital vision and also founding them, some of them. And so the first actually company I started is called Class Rebels. Class Rebels was an online learning company, and that was when I was in high school still. I think I was in class 10, if I remember correctly. And the idea behind Class Rebels was that it's really hard to find good quality study material for people who are not, let's say, in the best schools in the country. And it's also hard to connect with, like, if you have a question, what do you do next? So we built a network where you could ask questions from your classmates, you could ask questions to professors, and the main and that was what it looked like back then. And this is, by the way, in 2014. So this is like, whoa, it's like many years ago now. So this is what the profile looked like, where you could ask questions from your teachers, and the really insightful thing here was that we came up with this idea of a virtual library. And the thought was that, let's say you have an exam of physics and you have 10 chapters coming and you're like 20 people in a class. What would you do? You would read the textbook, you would make some notes, and then you would study those notes, which is cool. But it's kind of silly that we don't share our notes with each other. Like, what if everyone just created the notes for one chapter really thoroughly rather than the whole book, and then we could all share it. And so the idea behind the virtual library was that people can type, or they can click a photo, or upload PDFs of the notes that they've created themselves and share it around the world for free with other people. And with this, we built a really comprehensive data source of high quality study material, because one of the goals behind this was that not everyone is lucky enough to go to the best schools and have the best teachers, but a lot of people have a phone and data is super cheap. So if we could give you high quality study material, we try to break that barrier. And so that was what Class Rebels was about. How do we make sure everyone can study? Education should be collaborative. It shouldn't just be, one night before the exam, you're reading everything for the first time and then you give a test. It should be more open and collaborative. And high quality study material should be available to all students. So this was kind of my first forte into the startup ecosystem. And like, because I was also in school, so this was a problem I faced myself. And I realized that maybe there's something there, maybe there's something I can build that can kind of try to solve this problem. And we built this as a free and open platform where we didn't charge anyone. People who want to can upload their notes by choice, and all the other students would be happy to get them for free. So that was the first thing I did, and this is still school, so it wasn't like a real thing that I worked full time on, but it was enough for me to understand uh, what I should do, what I should not do, and I think the most important thing is that like this kind of points towards in business there's this term authenticity, meaning that why are you the right person to solve this problem, right? What makes you special? For me, it was that I was a student myself and I was having this problem myself. And so it led me to find solutions that other people would not find. Because let's say, a Harvard MBA might not be the best person to build an app for a student, but a student might. So that's kind of the first part of this, that who you are really helps shape what you can be really good at. After Class Rebels, I just had a lot of free time on my hands, and I did consulting work for companies. I built some apps here and there. So, for example, I built this app called Saga Music. That was a free app with which you can download and share music. And this is really interesting because this is like, again, like 2014, 15, whatever, like, half a decade ago. We didn't have Spotify. Streaming was not normalized. What we would do is go to, I don't know, what were the names, like BMP3 songs.pk, or use LimeWire or something. Like, people would just find MP3s and download them in their iPods or in their MP3 players and then share them. But that was a really hard process. Like, my brother came to me, my younger brother, and he's not like super tech, he's more business, and he was like, I just want to hear songs, right? Like, what do I do? And I was like, you know what, that's interesting. So I built this app, and the idea was you could just search for music, you could look at top charts, you could see songs, and that's it. You just press a button and the song is downloaded. And it's not like a shitty quality MP3. It's a high quality MP3 with the album art and everything, like, because like otherwise it would be like it would show the default icon rather than the right album art if you copied it. Like, all of these are such insignificant problems today, like, because people use Apple Music and Spotify and Ghana. But it was an interesting problem, and I was like, okay, let me build an app and see how it works. Then I got a friend involved, and then we built an Android app, and it was actually pretty popular. In the first 10 days, like, I think in the first 2 days there were like 10,000 downloads, and then in the first couple of weeks and months, I touched 100,000 downloads, and that was a lot. Of course, none of this is legal, right? It's an app which lets you download free songs. That's not very ethical. And as it turns out, there was a company which was launching their own music streaming service. And by the way, they haven't had any success with that even today. And so they sent me the cease and desist letter, like a whole lawyer legalese, and they said that this is not cool. You have to delete this app. We're removing it from the Play Store. You cannot have it anymore. And that was like my first like experience of like, whoa, actions have consequences. Why didn't anyone tell me that before? And because of legal reasons, I cannot tell you the name of that company, but you can guess it yourself. But anyway, so the idea behind Saga was that why is it so hard to discover good music? And share it with your friends. Like if you find a great song, it should just be as easy as, hey, here's a link you can download and share it. And it wasn't really like a money making thing because obviously it was not. It was using YouTube APIs and like a lot of uh, APIs to find songs and then embed album art and like there were a lot of these PHP scripts that I wrote back in the day. And so the idea was I'm going to keep it completely free and open source and community driven. And that was actually pretty cool because it was also my first forte into the open source ecosystem that, you can build tech that other people can improve and build upon. And especially with these free apps, which are also in the gray area, it's always, fun to have them open source. So, but the bigger point here is that authenticity matters, right? There is a problem statement that you care about because you think you would be a good fit to solving that problem. And and then where do you kind of go from there? For me, it was, I like building products, I like building tech. That's my background. So it's always just that. Um, so after high school, I founded Oswald Labs, which is what I'm best known for. And if you just Google Oswald Labs or read the Wikipedia article or whatever, you can find out a lot more about the technology we've invented and what we do. But it started with a hackathon, believe it or not, just like you're doing now. Um, and so this is 2016, 5 years ago now almost. Um, and I had an idea that so I was working as a consultant to e-commerce companies. I've been working since I was very young because I was lucky enough to learn how to make websites and apps and stuff when I was super young. And like all the other kids, I started freelancing, building apps, consulting companies. And in 2016, I was working with a major, I should say, e-commerce company as the lead consultant to help them uh, go from a web first experience to a mobile first experience. So 5 years ago, uh, majority of online shopping was still happening on the web. Today, of course, nobody goes like. I mean, you guys probably remember when Myntra deleted their whole website and said from now on you have to download the app to use it. So like today, I mean that was like a blunder, but I don't want to talk about that. The point is that today people use phones to shop, Amazon, Flipkart, what have you. But back then, that company said, "Hey, we want to transform into a mobile first experience," and they hired me as a consultant, and I started working with them. I did their whole mobile site. I redesigned the Android material design UI, blah blah blah. Um, and they were like a family of companies. They had a bunch of different e-commerce companies with different brands. So it was like a fun project where I did a bunch of different things together. But the one insight I had, I think, which has been like, I don't know, such a monumental thing in my life now that I look at it retrospectively, is is that their website was not very accessible. So they built a great site. It was based on like one of their sites was Shopify, one of it was Magento, one of theirs was WooCommerce. So they had like okay tech. It worked. They wrote a lot of these templates to make the site work. But I was learning about what is semantic web, what is accessibility on the web, ARIA, WCAG, all of these guidelines, and um, and I realized that their website is not very accessible. And for them, it doesn't matter that much because it's a big company. Hundreds of thousands of people use their site, and they're just buying stuff. It doesn't matter if a blind person cannot use it. They didn't care as much about it back then. Of course, today is a very different world. But so I had this insight that wait, why is a major e-commerce company not having an accessible website? That just goes not just it's not just ethically the right thing to do, it's also like from a business perspective, a smart thing to do that more people can come and buy stuff from your site. Um, and so that was the first insight. And it just happened to be completely big coincidence that I was participating at a hackathon because I also love the form factor. At least I had a lot more free time 5 years ago. And I love this form factor of hacking together something that, sometimes barely works in like a weekend and have a lot of Red Bull and and build a product that works. And those were like super fun. And I did this for a couple years, by the way. And in fact, just a really funny side note, in my first 2 years living in the Netherlands, I had to pay my bills. I did consulting work, this and that, all sorts of stuff. But I also went to a lot of hackathons, and like every hackathon, like over there, especially the prize money was just mostly cash, and it was like thousands of dollars. And so that's kind of how I lived for the first 2 years. Like every 2 3 months, I would win 3 4 thousand bucks, and that would be enough for me to sustain. But anyway, side note. And so that was Angel Hack Delhi, and we participated in the Code for Impact challenge, which was one of the categories they had. Because I had this idea that I had this like mind germ that I looked at other websites also, and they weren't also very accessible. And I thought, wait, this is not just a problem with this e-commerce company. This is a problem in itself. And so I was like, all right, let's. It just happens to be that I'm going to a hackathon next weekend. I called my friend Nishant and I said, hey, do you want to do this together? I have this idea. What if we build a Chrome extension? Because like, yeah, okay, I can make this site accessible, and I can tell other people, hey, make your site accessible. But the best thing to do is the browser or the user itself can handle it. So because then it would work across the web on all sites rather than just working at the one company that I was consulting. So so I'm like, all right, let's think. And so the idea was, let me build a Chrome extension that helps people with dyslexia, because that was like this one target audience that I realized would have a lot of disadvantage reading on the web, because websites are not very accessible and the fonts are too small and ads are there and this and that. And we helped them read stuff more easily. And that was it. It was a hackathon project. Um, and I built it over one weekend. We won the Angel Hackon for Impact Championship. That was it, over. And of course, like all of my work, I made it free and open source. I uploaded it on GitHub, and that was it, just like Saga. Except this time, it was a bit different. This time, people actually started using it. I and like a couple weeks later, or like within that month only, it was July 2016. I remember. Um, just in those next 2 weeks, I moved to Ahmedabad because I wanted to study design. And so I just started college. It was like literally like 2 or 3 days ago. And I just moved to the new city from New Delhi, which is where I lived back then. And it just kind of became viral. Like people started using it. I got an email from a therapist who works with kids with dyslexia based in New York City. And back then I was like, whoa, that is like, whoa, okay. I did not think a New York based therapist is going to start using this. And she sent me this really sweet email saying that, hey, I've been using this for some of the kids and it works really well. And in fact, I'm using it myself. And this is the best tool out there that I've ever used for kids with dyslexia or just for customizing a web page. Um, and I was like, what? That is crazy that I built this over this weekend hackathon. I spent maybe 20, 30 hours on it. And this really smart person is telling me that this is so good and it actually has a real impact. Maybe there's something there. And that was like, I was right at the edge of the tipping point to think maybe there's something there. Maybe there's this really big demand for technology that also helps people with disabilities, not just the rest of us. Um, and the tipping point really was more of an ego boost because newspapers started talking about it. We were on the cover of In the Sun Times. Uh, we were on Huffington Post. We were on like everywhere. Like people just started talking about it. And I was like, damn, this is kind of putting me in that territory of people know about this and people know about me. And there's definitely something there. And that was the tipping point. I was like, all right, screw it. I don't want to waste time at university right now. So I literally 15 days in, I dropped out. I called my mom and I'm like, um, this is not working out. I want to come back home. I want to work and I want to build a company and I want to do it full time. And parents are not supposed to be that fine with it. Not that they're not supposed to be that what's the word, like that supportive. But strangely, she was. They were, and they were like, "All right, cool. Let's see. What's the worst that could happen, right? Okay, yeah, maybe you go to college next year, whatever." So I dropped out, came back home, and I set up Oslo Labs with Nishant, who I worked with on the hackathon, and Mahendra, who I was consulting in e-commerce. And I said, let's build this company together. And that's how we started Osmo Labs. And our product portfolio started with this, the tiny Chrome extension, where you could set up your preferences and say things like, I want a bigger font size, or I want a higher contrast, and so on. And you would just press a button, enable, and it would redesign the web page to your style set. But that was the first thing, right? That was just the weekend hackathon project. When we started the company, we started doing a lot more R&D into this space. So, for example, we invented a smartphone that works for people with disabilities called Shravan. And even if you're completely blind, you could use this phone through a combination of vibrations and speech that I came up with. That was a flop project, by the way, because we ended up converting that technology into apps that we launched on the App Store because we realized that it's much easier to say, hey, you have an Android phone, download our app, than to sell a phone. But it was like a big learning experience. And we did a bunch of cool stuff. So today we have a wide range of apps. For example, Augmently, which is an AR reading app. So if you have like a textbook, you could just use your phone's camera and scan it and get dyslexia friendly reading stuff or read aloud. Live Subtitles, for example, is an app that helps if you're deaf or just partially, and you're talking to someone, just like you would get subtitles in a movie. You can just use your phone, point it at someone while they're talking. You can get the subtitles of what they're saying in real time. So even if you cannot hear them, you can read it. Or Visibly, where you could scan objects using deep learning. And it would tell you that there's a tree in front of you or whatever while you're walking. So like the interesting bit here is that I did not invent speech recognition, right? We've had it for years. Or just, I don't know, deep learning in machine learning to understand objects. The insight was that I could take this existing technology that we know and love, but use it in this new form factor and actually change the life of somebody with a disability. And let me just side note here really quickly, because Augmently, the first app on the left, like thousands of real kids in schools are using this to not stay behind in class, to better understand. And in fact, we published a research paper in the IEEE in 2019, I think, which proved that kids with dyslexia who are reading using this technology can read over 21% faster. So that means if it takes you 30 minutes, now you can do it in like 25 minutes. And it might not seem much, but a fifth increase in reading speed is significant because you're closing on that territory of matching kids who don't have dyslexia, right? Imagine if you have a classroom and dyslexia often goes undiagnosed. Parents themselves don't know that their kid is dyslexic. What if you have this tech and now you can read as fast and understand as fast as your other peers? So Augmently is awesome, right? And we worked with some really smart people to take this technology and all of this, the insight, the tech, the changes we do to the web page and so on, came from that open source browser extension that was like a weekend hackathon project. But today, like it is so it is priceless when I hear that I have a kid who have dyslexia, and a parent tells me that, and like she can learn, and like I'm proud of my kid and she's reading like this, and it's like it is just the most amazing feeling. So this also kind of tells you that hackathons are such like powerful, almost like pillars of change, because what you might think is a tiny idea might start like that, but it might go much further. So we built these apps, and then eventually we transitioned to being a B2B SaaS accessibility technology company, which is just a fancy way of saying that our core product became, instead of building consumer apps and products, it became building company stuff. So stuff that we would sell to other businesses. Um, so our core product today is a web accessibility platform and widget. So for example, this is a website called youthkiavaz.com. You've probably heard of it. It's a very major news, opinion, whatever, young people site. And on the bottom right of it is a little button. And when you press it, this plugin opens up. And this is what we built. And so this plugin has many different features for people with disabilities. Like, for example, you can tap on dyslexia and then it would turn on dyslexia friendly mode, or night and it would turn on dark theme. And the cool part is that the website does not need to make any changes to its code. You just add like one JavaScript tag of our plugin, and all of these features, translation, read aloud, blue light filter, all of this is added automatically to your site. So then we transitioned to what we are today, which is a company where we sell this product to other companies on a monthly subscription. So, for example, youth kiosks might say, okay, I'll pay you whatever, 10,000 rupees per month approximately, and I get this plugin on my site. And for them, it's really important because now, like, it's crazy that we forget, but 15% of the world population, that is over 1 billion people, have a disability of some kind. So it could just be like logical for you, even if you don't care, to make sure that you're not losing out on those 15%. And for somebody like Youth Ki Awaaz, which is a content company, and we say stuff like read aloud, it actually works not just for people who are blind, but for everyone, right? Instead of reading an article, you could hear it, stuff like that. So that's what we do now. So Oswald Labs is like a company where we build a lot of different things for people with disabilities, but all of our consumer apps and extensions of this and that, it's all free. The rule is, this is what we set up on day one: we will never charge any money from people. We will charge money from companies who can afford it. So it's always free for the end user, but we ask companies like UTKWAs and e-commerce companies and whatnot to pay us every month as a monthly recurring subscription to give our plugin away. So that's like a really long story to tell you. In short, that this was also like a seed, right? It was that information should be freely accessible. Everyone deserves access to information, right? Everyone has that right. If they have a computer, they should be able to go to Wikipedia and like find out information. But if you cannot do that, we try to make it simpler for you by enabling technology that works for everyone. And the interesting thing here, like just a quick also side note, is after Angel Hack and then we won and then we built that extension, I actually wanted to do a non-profit. My original idea was, I called it Oswald Foundation. Oswald is actually named after Dr. Oswald Birkin, who is the physician who first identified dyslexia. And he has a completely different story and it's kind of sad. Like, no joke, the Wikipedia article about us, about Oswald Labs, is much longer than the Wikipedia article about Oswald Birkin, the doctor who actually identified dyslexia. And so we realized what is happening there. So like in his honor, we named it. And so originally the idea was Oswald Foundation, but after all the press and the people working, and I realized that it could be to build a business model around this. But like at our heart, we knew that this is such a impactful thing for so many people's lives that we always charge companies and not people. That was like a key thing. And so I also learned about a transition from like doing something for free, like an open source project, to actually building a company with employees and with people who have families, like a real thing. So that was also nice. And to kind of why I told you all of this backstory about Oswald Labs and about even Saga Music and all the other things I did, is that for me the key insight became this thing that I call problems plus tools. That you find a problem statement, right? And then you find the tools to solve that statement. Pretty simple. It's not like I'm a genius who came up with this formula that nobody has thought of before. Like the problem is like, what's wrong, right? Why are you doing this? And the tool is like, how do you do this? The problem is more like, why do you get up in the morning and brush your teeth and then focus on this one problem that you found? Like, what is that insight? And then ideas are cheap, right? Everyone has an idea for an app, right? I'm sure this happens to me. This happens to all of you. Even your dad or your friends would say, "Hey, I have an idea for an app." Everyone has an idea for an app, but it's also important to remember the tools, right? Implementation is key, and so how do you do that? However, with hackathons, with engineers, especially being an engineer myself, I've realized that people tend to focus a lot more on, should I use React or Vue? Should I use Apollo GraphQL or a RESTful endpoint? Like, Should I write? I don't know what's happening these days. Should I write Flutter or should I write Kotlin or should I write Java? I don't know. I'm sure you guys think about that too. Like people tend to focus so much more on the second half of that problem, on the how, that they tend to ignore what problem are we solving in the first place. And so I read this book called The Shape of Design by Frankie Mero. He's a really cool designer. Some of you might know him. And one of the quotes that I really like, it really stuck with me was this. And he says that there's a symbiotic relationship between form and purpose, how and why. But because it's so much easier to answer, I don't know, use Kotlin, not Java, you tend to kind of forget what the why is because how is just easy to answer. It's so much easier to say, how do I paint a tree than to actually answer why do we need a tree in this painting. And so this is kind of like a fundamental thing that on how I like to think of that. Like the problem and the tools are symbiotic, they work together. And it's really important to have a strong problem statement before thinking of the toolkit. In my story, if you kind of summarize it, what was the problem? Right, the first problem was that education should be open. Everyone should get access to high quality study material. Okay, cool. All right, good problem. Music is difficult to find. Let's build an app or whatever. And with also labs, it is everyone deserves equity, right? Everyone deserves equal access to information and content on the web. And so, okay, these are very powerful problem statements. It's something that I care about, sure. But then what's next, right? How do you build a solution? And so, because I'm a designer and an engineer and an entrepreneur, for me, the tool is technology, right? As a kid growing up, that's always been the case. So for me, it's like, oh, how do I make sure classrooms are accessible? Technology. How do I share music? Technology. How do I, whatever. For me, it was like tech. But that's not the right answer. It's not even the only answer. That's the bigger point. For me, it was if I want to solve open education, I found it Class Rebels. To solve the problem of music downloading and discovery, I found it Saga. And to make it technology accessible, I found it also Labs. But the most important insight that I want to leave you with is that these are not the right answers to these problems because they're not the only answers to this problem. You can solve open education by a non-profit initiative like Teach for All. Like we have Teach India and Teach for India here, or Teach for America. And the idea is that after graduating from university, you might not be sure whether you want to take a job or do what. So you can take a year and you can go to inner cities and villages and schools where they don't have the best teachers and teach pro bono. That is like an excellent solution to making education accessible. Or for music discovery, Spotify, where you pay to hear music or you don't and it's ad supportive. But the idea is that the artist who worked so hard and came up with the lyrics and the song, they also get some money out of it. And that's such a what an elegant solution, right? And for access to information, it could be something like the W3C's WCAG, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, that are just a thorough guidelines on how developers can make websites accessible. So the point is that you can have the same problem statement, but completely different products that solve that problem. And like these are also not the only answers, right? Like open education, like the best is Khan Academy. It's an open repository of non-profit study material and videos and games and all of that. Or SoundCloud for music discovery, where it's not like you pay, but it's the artists who themselves upload music rather than Spotify dealing with record labels. Or access to information can be solved with legislation, like the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is a legal act that mandates that companies have to make sure that their offices and their websites and so on are accessible. So the point is that just because I said the answer is Class Rebels and Saga and also Labs doesn't mean it's the right answer. It doesn't mean it's the only answer to this problem. So what's really important is like if you had this problem of how do we make education open or how do we make music discoverable or how do we find information, what would your solution be? Because that's personal, right? It's who you are as a person, what your toolkit is, how you grew up. Are you a really good designer or a really good engineer or a really good business major who could cut deals? So you can come up with tools, the toolkit, which is your own, to come up with innovative solutions to these same problems. And so when you combine them, like problems plus tools, you get to opportunities, right? That's how you build a business or build an open source project or build a company or whatever. And that's where I am today, right? So that was kind of the first part. Don't worry, I'm not going to like keep talking for another hour. The first part is really where I put the emphasis. The rest just takes a couple of minutes. So that's the first part, right? That's your problems and your tools give you opportunities. The second and the third part are what I call S cubed and delta. So let's start there. S cubed, seek, screen, and seize, right? This is like a cute wording. But the idea is that when you have an idea, um, everyone has an idea, right? So how do you make sure that it's something that would work? I like to have this, like these three steps that make it easy. So for us, it was how do I help people with disabilities access content on the web, on their phone, whatever. And I was like, okay, let me build a browser extension. Okay, sure. Let me build a phone. Maybe not. Okay, let me build a web accessibility plugin. Right. So like you have an idea, you seek it, you come up with the idea, you screen it by coming up with innovative different ways. And for me, for example, it was such a learning journey because I built products, I launched them, I failed, and then I realized I should do this. The smarter thing is just brainstorm the ideas, find the problem statements, come up with what would work best, right? If I had screened before, I would be much faster. And the last is seize, right? How do we seize the opportunity? Like once we figure it out, how do we capture it, right? And so we did that through having a really cool sales team who focused on high quality digital marketing. So that's ads, SEO, Google AdWords. They partnered with governments. Like no joke, if you go to Startup India's website right now, you would see our accessibility plugin on it. So or on in the Netherlands, we've partnered with the province of Limburg, where we helped government schools make study material more accessible, and we partner with nonprofits and corporates and so on. And so for us, it was seek, screen, and seize. And how do we do that? And so just a quick side thing that I want to talk about, because I told you all of the things except Koi. And Koi is what I'm working on now. It's my new company. It's based in Switzerland, and it does interior design and it does furniture as a rental. So imagine you got a new apartment, right? You get an empty apartment on rent. You guys would probably do that in the next couple of years. And then what, right? You go to IKEA and you buy shitty furniture, which you have to assemble, and then it breaks out after a year. Or you buy really good wooden furniture, like our parents got, and spent lakhs, right? Because obviously, and abroad in Europe, in Switzerland especially, ticket sizes are crazy. Like if you want to have a decent 3 room apartment, and by 3 room I don't mean 3 bedrooms, just one living room, drawing room, one bedroom, let's say one study room, that would cost you approximately $20,000 to fully furnish. Because you would buy a good bed, you would buy really good tables and chairs, this and that. And I don't have $20,000. Like, who has $20,000 when they're starting out and getting an empty apartment? And so we had this insight that let's offer furniture on rent. And there are actually a bunch of companies who are doing that already, even in India. But the difference between us and them is that we don't say, like, a sofa. You cannot just get a sofa for like $20 a month. What we do is we ask you to upload your floor plan and some photos of your apartment. And we have professional interior designers who would actually come up with a really beautiful apartment, like a great Airbnb, like not like bad looking, like this photo, for example, like a really nice apartment which is custom designed to you. You would go through an online onboarding where we ask you, do you have a family? Do you have pets? Do you work from home? How many people do you have? Do you have dinner parties? And like the interior designers would design it for you. And then you can get the entire apartment fully furnished on a monthly subscription. So, imagine if you pay $1,000 a month in rent, you might spend around $300 more. And for 1,300, you would have like a really beautiful, fully furnished apartment. So that's what Koi does. We call it living as a service, which is kind of funny because literally last year, this time I was working on software as a service. And so it's completely out of my league and like super new and different. But yeah, now I'm doing living as a service. And the and this is, by the way, business secrets, so shh, please. But like the cool part here is that we have really big ticket sizes, right? Instead of saying get this chair, we say get your whole apartment. And so you spend 15 to 20,000 dollars on the furniture. Yeah, you pay every month, but the idea is that we can spend a lot more money on marketing, because if we close a customer, they're spending tens of thousands of dollars, not hundreds of dollars, which puts us apart. So that means we could really work on that customer acquisition cost. It could be high and it's fine. We also partner with retailers like IKEA, Fister, and so on. And so it's not actually me who goes and assembles the furniture. All of the delivery and warehousing takes taken care of by a partner. So we focus on the tech part and the digital angle, and that's why we don't have any retail space. You cannot find a koi, shop where you would look at the furniture, and so that means we don't have to pay all of that rent that IKEA have to do. So like these are kind of what sets us apart in the furniture industry. And there are a lot of competitors. There are people who do rental furniture, like Feather is the biggest one, or Furnish, and there are people who do interior design who are kind of combining it and saying, let us design a beautiful apartment for you and you can rent your furniture. And we're kind of competing with everyone here. We're competing with IKEA, who sells furniture, because you don't have to buy it anymore. We're competing with interior designers because you don't need them anymore. And we're competing with like Oliver Space, who rent out furniture. So it's like a whole thing. But it's a new problem that I'm working on, and it's very fun. So, and it's completely out of my comfort zone, by the way. So the question was, how do we make sure that you can have a beautiful home and a beautiful life for people who are starting out a job, or expats, or even us? And so we thought, let's do interior design consultations, or let's rent furniture, and then eventually we screened it to where we are today, where we do end-to-end interior design and furniture subscription, and we have a lot of cool in-house tech to do like all of these beautiful renderings. So like you can actually see like a photorealistic apartment of what it would look like before you sign that contract. And we got some really smart interior designers. And so like the idea is that this insight, this S cubed seek screen sees, has been really important in my personal life to figure out, once I have a problem statement, what should I do next? How should I solve it? So, because this talk was innovation and entrepreneurship, we talked about tech and innovation. I thought it's really important to leave you with some basic tools of how you can screen your ideas and then kind of take them forward. Um, but if you don't have an idea, I like to go back to Delta, right? Delta is change, right? And so you can look at change in market trends, in how people live, in tech, and like all of these things that are changing these days, like COVID, right? People working from home, like you can look at this change and come up with a problem statement, right? Like if all people are working from home, um, maybe I should sell laptops now, or maybe I should come up with a really nice foldable table so that you could work out of your drawing room and not like, I don't know, like, or the app that we're using, AirMeet, which was nothing, and they say raised $12 million a couple months ago, right, from Sequoia. And so um, this just the delta, like the change that we're seeing every day, I think can be a really powerful indicator in what's next, and that you can use to come up with your problem statement. So for Koi, we could not start this company 2, 3, 5 years ago. Absolutely not. Because everyone is like, why should I get another subscription? But today we're used to Prime and Netflix, and even cars are leased instead of bought. So the mindset of people has changed to accept that I don't need to own everything. And Airbnb and WeWork made it really easy for us, right? Why do Google offices give you free food, and like your workplace, even Indian startups, they look like WeWork and they look beautiful, because they want you to stay at work, right? It's amazing. Why would you want to go home in your tiny apartment if you could have all of this great stuff at work? So people are used to these beautiful environments. And now, as more people work from home, or just even if they don't, why would your house not be a beautiful environment? Why would you want to come home from Google or whatever to a shitty house? So people are expecting a beautiful life all around, and technology has finally caught up, right? Like we do automated 3D renderings of apartments. We have like all of these cool ideas about augmented reality where you can look at the furniture. Like all of this tech didn't exist a few years ago. So this delta really worked for us, that now this idea works really well because of these changes in demography, in how people live, in young people working, in market trends. And that was the last part. That my personal story taught me that you need a problem that you care about. You need the toolkit, which could be anything. There is no wrong toolkit. You don't have to be an engineer to come up with opportunities and then work on them. Then, when you have that problem statement that you care about, you seek it and then you start screening it. And finally, you seize it. But when you don't have an idea, you can always look at data, you can explore these changes, and you can come up with new opportunities and new ideas. That is it. That was like a good 45 minutes. So, by the way, all of these slides are available on Speaker Deck right now if you go to this link. And of course, I am here. We have some questions now, so I can take those. But if we don't, you can always ask me a question on social media or send me an email. I'm always happy to help. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. It was great talking to you and your story. It was really inspiring and motivating. The last 45 minutes, I was literally staring at the screen and smiling how it all just started with the hackathon. Definitely, you're doing freelancing before that, but yeah, it was really nice.